Warning. The views and opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect that of the HHN TV or its constituent entities. Viewer discretion is advised.
So a quote from Angel Reese directly. For the past 2 years, the media has benefited from my pain and me being villainized to create a narrative. They allowed this. This was beneficial to them. I sometimes share my experiences of things that have happened to me, but I have also allowed this to happen to me for way too long, and now other players in this league are dealing with and experiencing the same things. This isn't okay at all. Anything beyond criticism about playing the game we love is wrong. I am sorry to all the players that have to continue. This is why I started my podcast, to take my voice back and create the narrative of who I really am. At the end of the day, I don't want an apology, nor do I think this will ever stop, but something has to change. Well, I can't be mad at her. Look, whether anybody wants to admit to it or not, it was started by the media, the way this all went down. Let's do a quick recap here, people. Angel Reese gave Caitlin Clark the "you can't see me," pointed to her ring finger after they dominated LSU in the championship game while they were both in college. Keith Olbermann said he was tired of this and said, shut the hell up and play ball. Shaq went and checked him and said, in case you're wondering, you can shut the fuck up. And the reason you can is because Caitlin Clark started all that and Angel Reese finished it. Stephen A's been no help. He can lie and BS and say, oh, I'm saying what I'm saying about her because I care. Angel, I want you to know I give a damn. This is why you need to shut the fuck up, man. Also, Stephen A, for the record, takes responsibility for the publicity that the WNBA and other women's sports has received when he did literally nothing before that situation to talk and discuss WNBA basketball. That cap can all stop. So the media has very much benefited from it. But, and I do mean but, it has kept going from the fans. And the fans have taken no accountability and no responsibility for how they feel about both Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. You put them in the middle of a race war that they didn't ask to be in. And I got news for everybody. They support each other. While you are all bickering and moaning and bitching and complaining and everything else about these two and who the better ball player is, and Angel Reese has all her points off of layups and all her rebounds are all off of her own layup misses. You act like she's going to the rack uncontested. Are you even watching basketball? Or are you just reading a stat line? Damn it, I hate stats. I hate stats with a passion that you would not believe exist. Because that is all anybody who ever bases their arguments off of. And by the way, stats became a thing because of what was back then called popcorn baseball by the inventor Daniel Crunt, which we now know today as fantasy sports. He believed, because he was a real math head, that you could figure out sports through math. And boy, has he failed miserably. For the record, he has never finished higher than fourth in any, and I mean any, fantasy league that he has ever participated in. At least at the time when the documentary came out. And hell, I think even back in 2017, 2018, he still hadn't finished better than fourth. The numbers don't lie, but they don't tell the entire story. It's not like Angel Reese is going up all by herself and missing a layup. She's literally down in the hole with 2 or 3 or 4 defenders on top of her, and then she's out rebounding all of them. And by the way, you take away the rebounds from her missed shots, she still was doing what she was doing in terms of rebounding and leading the league for a while. So quit it. Caitlin Clark can ball, people. She can ball. She's got legitimate star power. She's an amazing athlete. What she can do, the all-around game that she has, just quit it. It's all been kept going by the fans and media, but mostly the fans. The media's benefited off of it. She's 100% right because they see what's going on, and so they know every post that they make is going to generate buzz because of the divide. That's why. So as far as I'm concerned, everybody can stick it because everybody's a part of it. It's whether they like it or not. It started in the media with Keith Olbermann and his 80s porn stash. Stop it, bro. You're like 60 now. Nobody thinks you're cool, man. And you lasted, 10 seconds at ESPN? Oh, but so much for journalism and doing just about 3 seconds of research. A little bit of research on Google. But, whatever, Broham. Do you, boo-boo. It's really working out for you. What does Keith Olbermann even do, by the way, now? Does anybody even know? This is why I'm disgusted with the crap that I love so much. That's not even reading a headline. That's just seeing something and then exposing the fact that you don't bother to look. That's what. Anyway, hell of a weekend in college football, man. Starting with Friday night, Virginia Tech, Miami. I'm looking forward to that football game. Miami so far, the most complete team that I've seen in all of college football in terms of just the balance that they have on offense, defense. Everybody's getting their hands up. I think their front four right now is probably the best in college football. While Virginia Tech isn't that good, I think they can pose some problems. I think Cam Ward's probably going to be under a lot of pressure, even though he's been very good so far under pressure this season. Much improved from a year ago. I think Cam Ward might be, other than maybe Altmaier at Illinois, maybe the most improved quarterback in all of college football this year. But I'm looking forward to that game, so we'll see how it goes down. But obviously, this weekend is going to be spearheaded by Bama and Georgia. Folks, I'm not much for stats like I just said. There are some, though, that are absolutely mind-blowing, and they prove a point. They have outscored their opponents, Bama, 107-26. Now, who have they played? South Florida, okay, not that great. Wisconsin, okay, not that great. And really, South Florida, they were in that football game until the fourth quarter when Bama completely took over that football game. Now, obviously, I think everybody saw what happened last weekend with Georgia and Kentucky. Look, Kentucky's known for giving Georgia fits. So I think that's a game that Georgia necessarily shouldn't get a pass on, but it's one of those games that every year it's like, okay, we know this one's probably going to be close, but Georgia finds a way to win, and you got to figure out a way to win those gritty games. It builds character and morale in the locker room. Hey, if times get tough, we've been there, we've done that, we're good to go. Now, look, I'm not the biggest fan of Jalen Milroe, okay? To me, he's a long list of quarterbacks in this country that are just slightly above average. And in terms of what they could potentially do in the NFL, I'm not really sold on. At the collegiate level, though, they look very impressive. Not that Carson Beck has been any better so far for Georgia. The numbers aren't exactly mind-blowing. But even then, I'm not really worried about numbers. I'm worried about leadership intangibles. I'm worried about, can this individual get it done? Do the players want to play for him? All those things. Those things matter, too, in football. They matter in basketball. They matter in baseball. They matter, folks. Whoever your leader is, it's about whether or not somebody will rally around them. And I think Carson Beck may have that over Jalen Milroe. Now, here's the deal. If I'm Georgia, I'm cutting ETN. I'm the running back room. I'm cutting them loose. That's all there is to it. I am running the football as much as I can. Why? Because I don't want Alabama's offense on the field. They're still explosive. They're not really missing Ian Gold a whole hell of a lot right now. They still have guys who can clearly stretch the defense. They still have guys who can clearly outrun you, outroute you, whatever the case is. they still have that capability. The play calling has been superb from Alabama for the most part this season. The transition out of Nick Saban has been very seamless so far. Alabama is not missing a step. One of the things that I discussed when you're going from Nick Saban to whoever the hell is going to walk in that door is two things have to happen. Number one, they're going to have to acknowledge Nick Saban. They're going to have to deal with how great was Nick Saban, what was the transition like. They're going to have to deal with all the questions about Nick Saban, especially when they finally lose the game. I guarantee you there are going to be people out there, hey, what do you think Nick would have done in that situation? Do you think Nick would have lost to that team? Do you think Nick this? I mean, it's going to happen. So far, though, it's been all sunshine and rainbows. But that's because now you're getting ready to play Georgia, and if you lose, these questions are going to come up. But the other thing that they have to do is they have to start developing Bama into their own. You got to make it you. You have to put your stamp on it, and you have to keep it going. And the best example that I can give anybody is Howard Schnellenberger at Miami. Had the good fortune of interviewing him one time, and he was absolutely correct when he told me that the dynasty he started was the best ever in all of football because it spanned over 20 years. And he was absolutely right. All the way from the 80s up until basically, 03, Miami every single year was regarded as a national championship contender. How many titles did they win? Jimmy Johnson kept it going. Then, it kept going. Every new coach. But they knew how to keep Miami while still kind of making it their own. Now, the difference is, obviously, there was a stretch of coaches, right? Different coaches every, 5 or 6 years, whatever it was, pretty much, for whatever reason, right? With Alabama, you've had the consistency for over a decade. Now it's going to be difficult, and this is a signature win right here, right? This is it. If you're going to beat Georgia, this is your signature win now as the new coach at Alabama. So if you ask me, it's more of a must-win for Bama than it really is for Georgia. Because obviously with the expansion of the 12 teams, despite what Feinbaum and his dumbass is saying, the reality is one loss isn't going to hurt anybody. But one loss could potentially hurt Bama because the questions are going to come. Maybe a loss for Bama would be good, if I'm being honest, because now, look, you get to deal with the afterwards, right? I lost the game. Okay, now we can regroup and recover. We can reset. And how you get through that initial loss will determine the way that things are going to go with Alabama from here on. So to be honest, it wouldn't be a bad thing, but the pressure to me is still more on Bama than it is anybody else. That's all I'm saying. Oklahoma State, Kansas State, look, first of all, Joe Klatt, no, the Big 12 is not deep. Granted, Oklahoma State at least has a win over Arkansas, but here's the thing. Alan Bowman is putting up a lot of crazy numbers, right? But this happens every year in the Big 12. All these quarterbacks, they come in and, first of all, they haven't played anybody really up until now. And the one team that they did play in Utah, they pretty much got dominated by their defense in that football game. So there's that. Even though I don't think Oklahoma State is really all that good, I still think that they beat Kansas State. Look, tomorrow, here's my thing, right? There's a lot of definitive football games that are being played. I've already talked about the defining moment for Alabama this season, what this game could mean for them for Georgia, because it's bigger right now than just Alabama and Georgia basically at the beginning of the year. Okay, we're not even out of September yet. What I am discussing here is the separation. This is where we start to separate the big dogs. We're getting into October, November. We're starting to create some of that separation now. And Kansas State, to me, hasn't even begun to separate themselves from anybody else in the Big 12, let alone the rest of college football. You had a hard time with Tulane. You had a hard time with Arizona, who barely beat Northern Arizona. Offensively, look, Avery Johnson is your typical Kansas State quarterback. A linebacker who's got a little bit of an arm and can run the football really well. That's it. That's literally what a Kansas State quarterback is. Whether anybody wants to think that or not, or believe that or not, I'm sorry, Kansas State fan. I don't give a damn. You could be in my DMs. You could be in my comment section. You can argue with me all day long. The win over Tulane is not impressive. Tulane has had 16 losing seasons in the last 24 years. They're barely 500 right now. I'm going to need you to stop the cap. The only reason that game got competitive with OU is because they laxed up after they got up huge in that game and started looking to Tennessee. That's what it went down as. That's what happened. You should be fortunate. Anybody who's a fan of the Big 12 or has a Big 12 team, whatever the hell, you should be fortunate that your conference is still considered to be a power conference, because OU has had 3 really bad showings in the college football playoff. They blew a huge lead in the college football playoff. TCU got annihilated. Man, that game was over after the first quarter. Obliterated. They should have cut that game short in the fourth quarter. Bro, we're going to shorten this to 6 minutes. Let's all get the hell out of here. Texas was not much better. And your top-tier teams that have taken off already, OU lost to Tennessee in their own backyard. You're not as prolific as you've been led to believe for the longest time. You've been getting all this favor. You've been getting all this favor from the voters. You've been giving all this favor from the college football playoff committee, favor that shouldn't exist, merit that you shouldn't have. Nobody in that conference has won a championship since Vince Young was the quarterback of Texas. I need you to stop the cap. Well, we were there. Okay, dude, is getting there and then getting blown out really worth the time? I'm a huge Syracuse fan. I'd rather them stay their asses at home than make it to a college football playoff knowing that they shouldn't have been there in the first place and get drummed by 50. Like, I'm good on that, bro. Really. I'm really good on that. So what I'm saying is, in terms of this game, if Oklahoma State wants to separate themselves in any way whatsoever and start to impress me or voters or whatever the hell, seeding, all that stuff that's going to matter, then they don't just need to beat Kansas State. They need to win this game by 40. I said the same thing about Kansas State when they played Arizona. To me, they should have been up at halftime 50-0. Because Arizona was not that good. You can't, struggling against Northern Arizona. Look, I know that the talent margin is separating a lot in college football because of the transfer portal, but come on, man. Like, I'm good on that. You're not changing my mind on this. I like Oklahoma State to win this game. If they don't win it by anything other than 30, then to me, they're just showing that they're really not ready for the college football playoff. I know it's early in the season. I generally don't make these predictions early, but I don't really see the Big 12 doing much of anything in the college football playoff. If they win a playoff game, I'll be surprised. There's no way in hell they're winning 2. That's all there is to it. Nobody's making it past the second round out of the Big 12. That's for damn sure. So there's that. I mean, come on, man. KU already lost to Illinois. Just forget about it, you know. BYU, come on. So Illinois, Penn State. So Illinois and Indiana were the 2 teams that I thought were the best teams in the Big Ten this season. You know, you look at Altmaier. To me, he's the most improved quarterback other than maybe Cam Ward, like I said earlier, in all of college football this season. The number that matters is W's. The other number that matters is 0, as in no turnovers. Now, I think they're going to face a Penn State defense that is pretty good, but I still don't think Drew Aller's good enough, to be honest with you, Penn State. But they've got Nate Singleton at running back. Look, this is another game where, and look, I'm a fan of the run game. I don't care what anybody says, man. I love running backs. I think they're still a crucial part in today's football, whether it's NFL, collegiate, high school, whatever. There are running backs out there that are still, to me, the big stars on their football teams. Bucky Irving last season, for instance, at Oregon. Audric Estime last season at Notre Dame should have been the guy to be getting the football 25 to 30 times a game. So if I'm Penn State, I'm running the hell out of Singleton. I am not going to put the game in the hands of my quarterback. It's just not going to happen. I want to run the football. I want to slow the pace down. Why? Because I just saw what Illinois did with Nebraska when they were down and they came back. I don't want them to have the football a whole hell of a lot, because I know for certain that even if I score quickly, let's say I do end up with a really good offensive day, I've got the perfect game plan, and I'm all up and down the field with the pass game and all that stuff, and I'm scoring in 5 or 6 plays, I also know that I'm giving the football back to a severely underrated offense. And I know I'm giving the football back to a team that's already showed me that if they need to, they can get points on the board very quickly. I want to control the clock. I want to control the pace of the game. I do not want to sit back and constantly be on my heels, because, look, even if you do get a couple of quick scores and Illinois matches you, I don't want my offense to start to get nervous. I want them to settle in. I want them to slow down, and I want to pace this thing out. I don't care if I want a slow burner. Look, nobody's paying anybody to score 90 points. I know that some people find that entertaining, but I've always said the only thing that's entertaining is winning. Do you think Penn State fan is going to really give a damn at the end of the day if they win this game 14-10? No. An objective person, subjective person, either one should be able to look and go, you know what? They won that game the way that they needed to. Now, I'm sure it won't happen, but sometimes you have to win games like that. Just go ask Georgia about Kentucky. Sometimes you just have to really grind out a win. And I've never had a problem with that, and I know some people, man, it's just so boring, da-da-da-da-da. Well, look, man, you're not like me. You don't have a job to do, so I'm sure you can find something else to do. If you want to be entertained and you want to see somebody score 90, then go watch the Big 12, where there's no such thing as defense and they don't really give a damn about it. That Oklahoma State, K-State game might be right up your alley, Broham. Me, on the other hand, I don't mind seeing defense. I don't mind seeing slow-paced games. I don't mind seeing games where a team looks and they go, look, this is how we are going to win. This is the game plan, and it's going to work. If they're on their sideline getting cold, just sitting around, waiting to get the ball back, now you're going to be putting pressure on them. Man, Penn State just had the football for 6.5, 7 minutes. We got to hurry up and go out here and do something. We can't go 3 and out, man. We got to hurry up, put some points on the board. No, because now you don't want your defense back out there either. So now you start, all these things start going through your head, right? Penn State controls the game with their run game. They win. I don't want Altmaier on that football field at all. I want him sitting his ass down. That's all there is to it. And then after that, when I'm on defense, I'm blitzing the hell out of him all game. I am not playing around with this man. I am stunt blitzes all night. Look, they're weak on the left side. You take advantage of that all day long. And you know that you're going to have to force him out to his right every single time. Now you got your defensive end playing contained there. That's what I would do. All right, so Louisville, Nevada. Cross all that out. Well, Louisville is running back by committee, but but they're also getting 6.5 a carry. You know, one of the things that I've talked about with the Ville is I think offensively they could probably run with just about anybody in the country. Now, here's the thing. They haven't really played anybody yet. Now, you can say Georgia Tech and maybe, all right? It's not the best team that you can play, but it's certainly not the worst. But Notre Dame's already played against A&M. I know that they had the major upset loss to Northern Illinois, who, by the way, asked me if Northern Illinois is ranked anymore. Okay, things happen. If I'm Louisville, though, I'm taking that game film and I'm going, our run game is better than Northern Illinois'. And I'm telling you, look, this is going to be a weekend where I'm all about running the football. I think Louisville needs to do the exact same thing. You know, Notre Dame, I don't think really has found themselves offensively yet, to be honest with you. They've been so hit and miss. They'll look really good on a couple of drives, and then they'll just look horrendous. I don't know that they really understand who they are as an offense. And if I'm Louisville, I'm taking advantage of that. Because what's going to happen is, look, it's a tale as old as time, people. Okay? You run the football, you open up the pass game. Now you got them playing up close. Now you got the defense just going to hell with it. We're just going to bring everybody up. You got safeties creeping up all over the football field. You go play action, and you hit them for 60. I mean, this is football 101. I'm not saying anything that's crazy. But it's weird, though, because talking like this seems insane in today's society. Because all anybody wants to do is talk about who can throw the football the furthest and who's the best quarterback. And the Heisman Trophy has basically become a quarterback trophy. I mean, does the Danny O'Brien, do any of these other awards for quarterbacks need to exist at all? I mean, it's Heisman or bust, right? So I look at it and I go, look, man, what I am going to do is I am going to run the football because they don't know who they are. And defensively, I'm following the moniker to a T. Completely shut down Notre Dame. Completely. I mean, they exposed Notre Dame in areas of the game that I don't know anybody knew existed up until that point because of the A&M game. I really think that Louisville can win this game if they're not necessarily conservative, but you know, there's nothing wrong with taking risk. I don't mind taking risks, but I think if you get into the third quarter and you've run the football as good as I know that they can, if they've done that, then, you know, I like a flea flicker right around midfield, and I think it scores you. If you're running the football and the game is a little close and you want to create real separation, you get around midfield, third quarter, out of nowhere, you go flea flicker, I think you score on it, and then after that, I think you've got all the momentum. I mean, that's just the way that I would see it going down if I'm the Ville. Now, simultaneously, if I'm Notre Dame, look, I got to get my quarterback situation figured out. I don't have Audric Estime anymore to lean on. I can't do any of that. We're not balanced enough. People are starting to figure us out already. We had a hard time with Northern Illinois. Sure, we came back the next week, but, you know, Now we got to keep seeing competition that people really didn't think that we were going to have this season. Notre Dame is not getting the privilege of being voted in to the college football playoff by winning a conference. It's just not going to happen. So now they have to do everything that they can to impress. Look, I'll be honest with you. I think Notre Dame, if they're going to win, they need to win this one big. Because a ranking right now for Louisville essentially doesn't really mean much. Not this early in the season. But a loss will mean everything. Because it'll probably knock them out. Because you don't have the good fortune of, well, I lost, but I still won my conference. So it doesn't matter because I'm already in. You don't have that good fortune. Everybody else that's in a conference, and I mean this legitimately, folks, think about it, can go 7-6, but they won their conference. So it doesn't matter that if the ACC has a down year, the Big 12, none of that. Doesn't matter. So Notre Dame's got to do something, I think, really special in this game. I personally don't see it, to be honest with you. I don't know that Louisville wins, but even if Notre Dame does, which I don't know, I see Louisville maybe winning this thing by 10. Even if Notre Dame does pull it out at the end of the day, I don't think they win it big enough. I think it's a very close football game, and from here on in, the schedule is what it is, but it's certainly not much of a confidence builder. And at some point, you've got to really separate and put up points. But that's the unfortunate society that we live in still, right? Everything is a fucking ballerina play to these fucking voters, and you got to win football games by 40 to look impressive. It's the way that it is, right? Shouldn't be that way. You should just be able to win football games. But, that's what it amounts to. You can't get away with winning a game right now that's like this by 3, because you don't know how Louisville's going to finish the year. And you certainly can't afford to lose it, because if you do, that's probably it. Now, that's Notre Dame's fault. Don't get me wrong. I don't think the Pack is going to be able to sway them. Even though they got Boise State, which, as much as I love Boise, I mean, they've already lost a game this year. So we'll see how the rest of all that plays out. All right, so Derrick Rose, he retires. Look, this pretty much goes without saying, right? I think everybody knows that Derrick Rose may have been the greatest basketball player of all time if he was able to stay healthy. And the injuries just continue to pile up and mount up. And I think anybody with half a brain would be able to go and look and say his career was not fair to who he really was. His body was not fair to who he really was. And look, I mean this. As a guy who believes that Michael Jordan is the GOAT and will carry that up until, somebody else has got to, really show me. I think LeBron is the greatest player in his era, but I don't think he's the GOAT. I think Derrick Rose would have superseded Bron. I think Derrick Rose would have eventually superseded Jordan. And I think if he'd been healthy, Chicago would have won multiple championships with him. I believe that firmly. You're not changing my mind. I think everybody knew at Memphis he was the best basketball player on the court that day against KU. I don't give a damn how that game turned out. And I think everybody knew that Derrick Rose was going to be amazing. Have you ever seen a more fluid basketball player in the NBA? He literally made everything look effortless, man. And it's sickening. It's really just sickening to see a guy with that kind of talent not really truly be able to put it on full display. Don't forget, there were talks of Melo potentially going to Chicago. Now, at the time, if it happened and Derrick Rose stays healthy and then you got Melo, you have a championship. And I know that Derrick Rose ended up with the Knicks and everything, but by then I think everybody already knows that the injuries were catching up. He had, some moments here and there. He had, some good partial seasons, after Chicago days and all that. But at the end of the day, he was never nearly who he was when he first got drafted. I, for one, don't know how I would feel about my career if I were Derrick Rose. At the end of the day, he got to play in the NBA. He played how many seasons in the NBA? Was it 15? And at the end of the day, he did more than most in their lifetime. The guy's traveled all over the world. He's made NBA money. If he saved it, he's good for the rest of his life. You know, he's done his thing, man. I don't know. I think what Derrick Rose will say about his career now might change in 5 years, and then again in another 5 years. You know, when you have time to process, everything starts to change. You feel different ways about different things. It's like your childhood, right? You feel one way about it when you're growing up. You feel another way about it years later, and then you wake up one day and you really reflect on because you know you got older, and then you go, damn, that's what it was really like. And then you had similar life experiences and you were either understanding or really mad. I think that's why I don't know, because, you know, I could quote Derrick Rose and all that stuff right now with how he's feeling about his retirement and everything else, but I know that it's probably going to change in a few years. I don't think that we will see the same Derrick Rose. You know, it was just good to see him smiling. You know, you've had the MVP chance. You know, it's been good to see him in the moments that he's had, because you can't, like, when is Derrick Rose, you know, when you ever hear in the NBA, like, Derrick Rose is back in trouble again, like, you never, you know, he just seems like kind of that A1 low-key dude that just kind of does his thing and then he goes home. Whether it's kicking it or whatever the case may be. I think everybody wants to have a beer with, you know, the stash and all that stuff, you know. And all, but I'm the type of dude that I want to kick it with Derrick Rose. Because I feel like he got a lot to say, man. You know what I mean? Like one of them low-key dudes that just, he starts talking and dropping knowledge and you're just kind of kicking it and you're like, word? You know what I'm saying? And you're just like, all right. Now I'm going to start living by that. You know what I'm saying? That's, to me, that's D Rose, man. I don't know. I guess fanboy moment, whatever the hell. I don't really give a damn, man. I guess at the end of the day, I'm just trying to say that I wish for him that even though he's lived a solid life, that his career would have justified who he really was. You know, he's probably not going to be in the Hall of Fame, and he should have easily been a Hall of Famer. But his body just gave up on him, man, and just was like, nah, bro, I can't do it, which is sad. It really is sad. All right, real quick here, the UFC, $375 million settlement. Whew. Man, I'll tell you what. By the way, it's TKO Group for anybody who's been watching the documentary, Mr. McMahon. The amount exceeds, by the way, the proposed $335 million settlement. By the way, antitrust is essentially whether or not you were creating a safe working environment, whether or not you were hindering other companies, whether or not you were using influence. I mean, there's a lot to the antitrust laws that are in place, and they have continue to develop. I think the first initial antitrust law was somewhere in literally 1894, if I remember correctly, right? And then it just 1914 and then revamped again and again and again. The way that I look at it is the UFC is basically having to admit that they violated any and everything. I mean, you know, they didn't protect their employees the way that they should. They didn't protect their fighters the way that they should. They haven't allowed them to create their own money the way that they should. You know, I look, Dana White is a guy who's both very lovable and very hateable at the same time. Because you look at Dana and he gets honest about things that you don't necessarily want him to be honest about, but at the same time, you have to respect him because at least he's keeping it a buck. And he's not going over the top with it, and he's not yelling and hooting and hollering. He's just saying exactly what the fuck is on his mind. And you can't really fault the man for being that way. He's probably the greatest promoter in the world, literally the world. You can say that. Let's not forget, UFC, it's global. Fighters come from all over the world to fight at the UFC. The UFC travels all over the world with their fighters to fight. It is a globally recognized brand. Simultaneously, it does have its problems. You've got interim championship belts that are being defended. Why? Should only be one champion, and I don't want to hear what any of the excuses are in the meantime. There should be none. If the champion can't fight, then he can't fight. If it goes for a certain amount of time, okay, bro, we're going to strip you. We can't keep doing this. You're holding everything up. We got guys vying for a position here. They're waiting for you. You can't do it. We'll wait till you can come back. In the meantime, this is a belt that people are fighting for. And I don't want to hear the paper champion BS, because if the other guy's choosing not to, for what the hell ever reason, then it doesn't matter. I.e., old Bones sitting around. How many more of my records can I break? And stop. Stop. Year and a half later, we're finally getting a title defense. You kidding me? Which, by the way, when is that fight? When is that fight, and when is the Tyson Paul fight? You can't tell me that they're not violating. You know, and Dana White is the first one to complain, oh, there's a big boxing match where we have the spear, the disrespect. Man, are you kidding me right now? Buddy knew exactly what he was doing. Come on, man. Like, stop it. Not paying, fighters a fair wage. Boxing, their fighters have been making a lot more money for a long time. Now, I understand that boxing is not necessarily under a brand. You have a lot of different gyms and a lot of different, but they just box. It's a globally recognized thing. It's a globally recognized sport, and you're a boxer. That's it. You're not tied necessarily or contracted out necessarily to an outfit. And the outfits that are out there, they're in little territories, kind of like, old WWE days, when you had Texas and Georgia wrestling and all that stuff. I'm not talking about wrestling. I'm just saying to try and map this thing out for everybody. So you had that, right? Okay. Now, with boxing, pretty much the same thing. You got your little, a group over here and a group over there, and then they come out of it and they really go pro and they really start getting big fights. And, of course, you got Oscar De La Hoya and you've got promoters and stuff like that have, major outfits, but you're not necessarily contracted out through them all the time. And even then, the ones who are, you're still making better money. But most of the time, you're just contracted out to a promoter. Like, we could talk about how good the promoters are, if they're really good for their fighters and all that stuff in boxing. That's a separate issue. But as far as the money goes, we know where it's at. And we all know that any sport is dangerous and any sport presents health risk. At least be paid what you're worth in the meantime. I understand that the UFC's got to dole out money to, X amount, but to me that tells me then you've got too many fighters under a contract. For the amount of money that you're making versus what you're giving to fighters. And look, you've had Gray Maynard come out and say, look, I was giving money under the table, da-da-da-da-da. Well, I'd have been shutting the hell up about that. Tax cuts, tax reasons, whatever it is, hush money, I don't give a damn what you call it. I probably would have been like, well, to me, that's not really an argument against Dana. You might think it doesn't help my argument necessarily, but the point of what I'm saying is right now when you look at the UFC as an organization, it's very clear that they have not taken everything and all their responsibilities seriously. That's all there is to that. All right, guys, I am Drew Duncan. We are live. It is Underground Sports. Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram is all at Drew Duncan Radio. And wherever you listen to the podcast, tell your device to play Underground Sports by Drew Duncan. Apple, iTunes, iHeart, et cetera, wherever you're listening, I am there. Monday through Friday, 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Well, now the new schedule starts next week. Monday and Friday, Eastern Standard Time. I'll be on WBFR Block 50 Radio, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And, of course, Monday and Friday now on the Hip Hop Network I will be there as well. You can download the HHN TV app, aka the Hip Hop Network, on all devices, your smart TV, Droid, iPad, iPhone, wherever it is, wherever you are, they are. Guys, your local programming is next. Don't you dare touch that dial.